my great honor, thrill, and pleasure to introduce to you, live in the Friendly Speaking Sports Studio via satellite, we have Bobby Valentine. Bobby, how you doing tonight, buddy?
Hey, Larry, good to be with you. I'm doing fine, thank you.
Bobby, I've been looking forward to this. I grew up, believe it or not, I was a Bobby Valentine fan. 1977, I still got a picture in my photo album of you with the New York Mets back then. So I want to thank you very, very much. And of course, great manager as well. But, we were talking before you came on, right before we had Michael on, about the lockout that's going on in Major League Baseball. And you've been through a couple of them. I know as a player, as a coach before. What are the type of things, especially at the beginning of the season, which I believe in 72 when you were with the Dodgers, there was a strike back then. What would, first of all, as a player, how do you keep things in perspective, not knowing what's going on? And as a manager, what do you tell your players?
Well, Larry, good to be with you. I'll tell you, times have changed. So, you have to remember 1972, I was a player rep at the time. I went down to be one of the voters on the first CBA ever with Marvin Miller negotiating for the player side and the owners having a hard stance on their side. And what we did is we would leave this room where all the player reps were after hearing Marvin and the executive council tell us what's going to be presented to the owners. And we go to the payphones in the lobby of the hotel, and all the payphones were all jammed up, and we'd call our players who were stationed in different cities around America, where they would hold the phone out so that they could hear from the earpiece of the phone what we were saying. Times have changed, okay? So the players are informed. Everything that the council wants them to be informed of. And the owners are also informed because they had no way of knowing, the entire group, what was being negotiated on their behalf. So, right now, this situation is just, basic negotiations 101. Let's see if they're going to blink. You got to get to that hour, whatever hour it is, the 11th hour, the 10th hour, the 9th hour. You got to get to that witching hour where the players start to get antsy and the owners are wondering when they're going to start making their money. And you got to see who blinks. And if one of the sides blinks, they're going to lose a little in negotiation. If neither side blinks, they have to go to mediation, which has already been proposed by the owners to make the fans think that they're the good guys. You understand, it's all negotiation posturing at this time. And I think we're going to have a full season. I think there's going to be an agreement. I think there's some sticky stuff in the waters, especially what's happening in your world, Larry, this streaming world. Is the streaming revenue 5 years from now going to be the same as the network and cable revenues? Because that's how people are going to be watching games 5 years from now. It's not going to be in the bundles that they get with their cable, and it's not going to be on the network televisions. So that's a little roll of the dice. The owners are hoping they're going to make more money. The players are hoping they're going to get a larger percent of more money, but you really don't know what that number is right now. So I think that's one of the quagmires that they're stuck in.
Now, Bobby, they did not give a good taste in the fans' perspective during the whole COVID situation a couple of years ago. And I know this from just the past. We all, as baseball fans, said, if they do this again, we're not going to come back. We always come back because we're baseball fans, and we'll always be baseball fans. But how damaging, if at all, could this be if there is a lockout to start the season?
Well, I think baseball has shot themselves in the foot a number of times in the past decade. And I don't know how many feet you have left to shoot. So this has got to be handled properly. This cannot be thrown at fans in a negative perspective because we're in the building mode. We're not in the hold on mode. Years ago it was, let's just keep what we have. Let's hold on to what we have and we're going to be fine. Or even in some of the eras, it's been, let's continue to build on what we have. We're on a slippery slope here. Baseball has not been gaining the popularity that they need to be gaining. And they can't make a mistake at this time of the year after 2 years of COVID to have the fans think that they're anything but the number one priority in this whole situation.
Bobby, back in before 1969, when you went in the minor leagues, you had a great minor league career, but you had the ability and the honor of playing with one of I think, the greatest LA Dodgers managers of all time in Tommy Lasorda. I know you guys became real close from from that time till he passed away. Talk about your relationship with Tommy and what he meant to you.
I'm sorry, Larry. Yeah, I signed in '68. Tommy Lasorda is my rookie league manager. My goodness. He wasn't the Hall of Fame manager then. He was a rookie league manager. I was the number one draft choice. I was Italian and he was Italian. We had a bond. And if he didn't understand that he was on the trajectory, even though he's on the bottommost level of professional baseball, he was in rookie ball in 1968 for his third consecutive year, that he believed so much in himself that he thought he was going to rise above, and he did, because he was different than everyone else. What sells in America, what wins in America is that if you're first, if you're different, or if you're best. And Tommy had two of those things going for him. He was hardly ever the first, but he was always different, and he was always the best. And when I say the best, he never got credit for his ability to manage people, for his ability to manage the game of baseball, for his ability to adjust. He was the first manager to break away from the old style of managing. Do you know how hard it was to be that pioneer, that you weren't going to be the militaristic, my way or the highway? I don't care what your name is. I don't care what you're doing. You're going to do what I tell you to do and nothing else. Tommy Lasorda learned people's middle names. He learned the high school or college that they came from. He learned the wives' name, the parents' names, the kids' names. He created an entire different paradigm of it. It was, listen to what I know, and then you'll learn something. And he changed that paradigm to saying, hey, I know you don't care what I know until you know that I care. And when his players understood that he cared, there were walls that they were willing to run through, and that differentiated him from everyone else.
And, another great name that you had the opportunity to play with and manage with was Nolan Ryan. You played center field, I think, in his first no-hitter that he ever had. And then I know you managed his last two with the Rangers. How dominant was Nolan Ryan, and how does he rank among – you've seen a lot of pitchers in your time, Bobby. How would you rank him?
Well, this afternoon I was riding in the car and I called my old teammate and my old pitching coach, Charlie Huff, who still works for the Los Angeles Dodgers, has been with the Dodgers since 1966, is still a minor league instructor. And, of course, he and Nolan pitched on the same staff that I had the honor of managing back in Texas in the mid to late 80s. And Charlie put it succinctly. He said, no one understands how that guy did what he did. He worked harder than anybody else. He threw more pitches than anyone else. He was more competitive than anyone else who ever played the game. When he went out, it was a whole different boxing match. There were different rules. There was no limit on the time that the round was going to last. He was going to be standing at the end, and he was just incredible. If he ever, managing him, I remember saying, "Hey, Nolan, wouldn't it be cool if you got someone out on the first pitch?" Because, I played with him when he threw 236 pitches in a game, where he struck out 19 and we walked 16. He pitched 13 complete innings in a 4-man rotation and got a no decision. Okay. I said, would it be cool if you got a guy out on one pitch? And he said, how the hell do you strike a guy out on one pitch? Huh? So he was just in it, for the competition. He wanted the trophy in every competition, and the strikeout was how he claimed the trophy. He really was different. His 5,000 strikeout, Larry, for whatever it was worth. It was at the old Arlington Stadium. He was pitching against the Oakland A's. He had 4,997 strikeouts going into the game. He needed 3 more for 5,000. Okay. 4,000 was reached by no one other than Steve Carlton, I guess. And now he's going for 5,000. And Ricky Henderson happens to come to the plate when the number flashing on the old scoreboard is 4999. Huh? Holy cow. He's ready to get the 5-0-0-0. And the count went to 3-2. So now everyone in Arlington Stadium, the old 42,000 people, stood on their feet. They were applauding. The count was 3-2. They thought they all were ready to see history, and they all wanted to capture it in a Kodak moment. So they had most of them had their little brownie cameras that you remember, with the throwaway camera that you took the film over to the drugstore to develop the reel. And as he wound up to throw this pitch, which he threw 97 miles an hour up in the strike zone, because he was going to get his 5,000 strikeout on his fastball. Well, as he threw that pitch and it left his hand, all 42,000 people flashed their flashbulb to catch a Kodak moment. And the entire stadium went up in a flash of light. It knocked me off of the top step that I was standing on. I was totally unaware of what was going to happen, and it surprised the hell out of me. As the pitch came in, one of the great athletic feats of all time occurred, and that was Ricky Henderson swung at that ball coming in the flashbulb backdrop, and he fouled off the pitch. It was incredible. And Nolan got the ball back from the umpire, walked behind the mound, rubbed it up a little, got back on the mound, stared in, nodded head that he was going to throw another fastball that everyone, including Ricky, knew he was going to throw. And he threw a 97-mile-an-hour fastball about belt high, a little away, that Ricky swung and missed that for number 5,000. Nolan Ryan was amazing.
Now, on one of the most, what they call in New York anyway, Bobby, infamous nights, it was near the trade deadline. Dave Kingman goes, a very popular player who I knew real well in New York, gets traded to San Diego for you. But that wasn't the part that was most infamous that night. On that same night, everyone's pitching idol, Tom Seaver, was traded to Cincinnati. How tough was it for you to come to New York after all that happening and have to play baseball?
Well, yeah, at the time, it was no big deal for me. I didn't know what was going on with the New York Mets. I was hanging out with the San Diego Padres. I had just bought my first house. The Drapes just came in. I was living in a beautiful place in San Diego. I was married. I was excited about being with the team. I had played the entire AAA season the year before with the San Diego Padres AAA team in Hawaii, and I earned a spot on this team. And it's June 15th, and I have the general manager, Buzzy Bavasi, call me on the phone and says, "Hey, kid, I got good news for you. I know you always wanted to be in New York, and we got a trade for you to go to New York." And let it be told, I was a Yankee fan most of my life, and my heart skipped a beat thinking I was getting traded to the Yankees. And then his next breath, he said, "Ian, you need to meet the New York Mets in Pittsburgh tomorrow night." And I went, "Oh, my." And I had no idea that it was the Midnight Massacre. I had no idea that M. Donald Grant and Tom Seaver and Dick Young were having the trials and tribulations that they were having that led to the franchise, Tom Seaver being traded to Cincinnati for 5 players. But I was involved in the trade for Dave Kingman on the same day. And for the next week, it took me an entire week to really grasp the enormity of what happened in a franchise's history on that, June 15th, 1977.
Well, you got to see the demise of a franchise, but you came back as a manager and saw a resurgence of a franchise. Talk about your time coming back to the Mets as a manager. First 2 years making the playoffs, made the World Series. Talk about how special that was.
Well, it was special, but as I say in my book, Valentine's Way, and I tell it a pretty good story, there was a lot of water that went over the dam before 1999 and 2000 with me in the Mets, including me managing in their minor leagues, coming back and thinking I was going to be the manager of the major league team and only getting a minor league job when I came back from Japan. And then, replacing Dallas Green and finding probably as weird a situation as there ever had been until maybe I got to Boston in 2012, where it was total dysfunctionality, that players weren't responsible for what they were doing. Ownership was totally disconnected from what was going on. The press was very aggressively negative against the players and the individual players on the team. And, that was a weird situation when I took over in 1996, because things just weren't going the way they were supposed to be going. But we straightened the ship out. 99. My favorite team I ever managed, or one of the most favorite teams. Got to that Game 6 of the National League Championship Series and made the playoffs. And the next year we made the playoffs again, went to the World Series and played those 5 very exciting games against the Yankees, but came up short. But those were great times in Met history. We turned the franchise around, and when I say turned around, from 1988 to 1998, there wasn't a lot of joy in Mudville.
Right. I want to show you something, and hopefully you can see this. And I always wanted to ask you this. What was going through your mind when you were in the dugout and you saw this? Let me see if I can pull this up for you, Bobby. I think I have it right.
Yeah, you got it. I know what it is. Yeah. Yeah. So I was trying to bring a little levity to a group that, this is the other one. No,
this is the other one.
The home run. This is nice.
Yeah. Nope, actually, this isn't. What this is, Bobby, I'm just going to try to turn the volume off. There we go. This is when he threw the bat. Can you see that?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, when Roger, yeah. Yeah, that was, that was regretful. Roger finally made the pitch that he wanted to make against Mike. Mike owned Roger. He tried to throw that fastball inside to him a number of times. Often, Mike would just raise his arms and take it as a ball, and then get the next pitch or maybe even two pitches later, get the pitch out over the plate and hit a rocket against Rocket. Mike owned him really until the prior game when Roger hit him in the head.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. So now this is a World Series game, the first time they're meeting in a year, and Roger knows he can't hit him in the head this time, but he's got to make his pitch, and he does. He makes his pitch. It's first inning, breaks his bat in half, which he had all intention of doing, and every at bat he wanted to do that against Mike. And, when the bat came back at him, it was almost like a celebration on his part that he broke the bat. And I think he was surprised that it was a bat that he was hurling in Mike's direction. And it was just one of the most bizarre situations I've ever been involved in.
Do you think he was throwing the bat at Mike, or was he throwing it just out?
Yeah, it's something that's, 20 ounces or so. I mean, how do you throw it where it's going to mean anything? He threw it in Mike's direction. He might have thrown it, I don't know, to hit him. Big deal if he did. It was, it wasn't going to do any damage. Mike knew it wasn't going to do any damage. Mike was as bewildered as anyone. One, that he didn't know where the ball went. Two, that his bat broke in half where he was embarrassed. And three, that Roger was acting like an idiot. It wasn't a really good place to act properly in.
Yeah, and Bobby, as you know, 2001, 9/11 happens. Pretty much the world stops. And then baseball starts again. And you just mentioned it a couple seconds ago. You thought it was the home run that Mike Piazza did. But it seemed like, and I'll never forget that night. Never forget that night.
Yeah.
It seemed like everybody had it's let air out, let the breath out. It was almost like a healing process that was going on. What was it like? You were there. I mean, I know on TV, it sounded so loud at that stadium when Mike hit that home run. What do you remember about that?
It was loud. It was a loud sound of the crack of the bat. And then the sound of the cheering, kept getting louder as he ran around the bases. No one knew how to act. That was an amazing day. It was an amazing event, and I guess it was just meant to happen that way. And I'm so glad that it did.
I want to ask you about Japan. We got a couple more questions for you, Bobby, but. I've talked to people, former Major League players that have played in Japan. You had the privilege of managing in Japan, winning championship. What was the main difference for you as a manager when you went to Japan? What was the major difference in the game of baseball? Was it fundamentals? I mean, what was it that you noticed right away that you said, wow, that's completely different from Major League Baseball?
Nothing. Nothing during the game, Larry. It was a different language. It was, different fandom. There's different sounds in the ballpark. There's cheering all the time. The surfaces were a little different because they still played on AstroTurf, and most of that was gone out of the MLB game. And if it wasn't AstroTurf, most places had all skin infield. So that was different. But Hell's Bells, the game was exactly the same, except for on the scoreboard, they put two strikes and three balls instead of three balls and two strikes, that the strikes always came first. And that the pitchers didn't throw up people's heads, that the pitchers enjoyed the competition, but never intended on giving anyone bodily injury during the competition. They always thought about winning the competition, but they understood that that hard ball being thrown 90 miles an hour plus, if it lands in the wrong spot, it could create injury, if not death, and they don't play that game.
Now, Bobby, you mentioned a little earlier, very briefly, about your time in Boston, and I remember the day you got hired there. I was so excited. I had lived in New York, I lived in Boston, then I moved to Tampa for the rest of my life. But I remembered it, and I said, damn, this would be a perfect fit, getting Bobby Valentine here. And things didn't work out. But for me, as an individual looking from the outside in, it almost looked like it. I know it's funny to say, but the era of players took over. What I mean by that is we're in a different time where people are more sensitive than they used to be. What was the major issue with the, with the unsuccessfulness in Boston with the players? You only managed 1 year there. What did you find to be more difficult than in your past experience with the Rangers and the Nets?
It wasn't so much different. When I got to the Rangers, I had to weed out the weak. And at the beginning, everything wasn't successful. I got to the Mets, you had to weed out the weak. You had to change what wasn't working to get things that were working. And obviously, the reason I got hired is because, they were drinking beer and eating chicken. They had people that weren't talking to each other. They had, dissension between the front office and the clubhouse, and dissension in the clubhouse. So you had to weed out the weak and make those things better. And that's what happened there. And about 17 guys were gone the next year, and they wound up winning a World Series.
Yeah, you're right. They did. Tony La Russa, Dusty Baker, two what I call old school managers, still having a lot of success in Major League Baseball. You're an old school manager. Does old school baseball still work in Major League Baseball, and will it always work? And the second part of that question is analytics overused?
Okay, so I was new school as far as those guys were concerned. I was a little younger, and I was always doing things differently, trying to think outside the box when I was competing against Tony and Dusty and their friends and their peers and all that good stuff. But, I think that Dusty was a lot more old school than Tony, and Tony was a lot more old school than I was. But baseball is baseball. And, if you get someone who's in the right situation with the right people, it can click. And so it's not about, I don't know what old school is necessarily. It's kind of like I hear this stupid term of small ball. Small ball is just baseball. You do those things to play baseball. If you want to do home run derby and strikeout derby, then you just think about striking people out and hitting home runs. But, baseball is the same game, and it depends on what lens you're looking at it through.
All right, before I let you run, I have to show you this, and I got to laugh, but you have a laugh before I let you go. But please explain to me what you were thinking here, because I love this. I just thought this was the funniest thing I've ever seen, and I remember watching this game.
Thanks. Once again, for that, you're going to have all your friends and yourself and all your viewers look at Valentine's Way, the book that I came out with. I in detail explain what was going on there. I was bringing a little levity to the team and trying to win a ball game, and it happened to work.
Well, good. I loved it, man. Don't get me wrong. Well, listen, my friend, I want to thank you so very, very much for taking time out of your schedule to join me on Frankly Speaking Sports today.
Speak frankly at all times. Thanks, Larry. Talk to you soon. Thanks for letting me be on.
All right. Stay safe.
See you, man.
All right. That was Bobby Valentine, former Texas Ranger, New York Met, and Boston Red Sox manager. I know we went a little bit late today. I want to thank my friends on